Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Yeah, Gavin, at least Manson was cool, unlike, say, Peter Sutcliffe. Ass.
The following podcast contains
profanity, boob jokes, and tired comedy references.
Explicit language.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. Would you let the entire Manson family move into your mansion because of some hairy hippie pussy? What the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe, and this is episode number 527, the When You're Here, Your Family edition of the show, where we talk about the man responsible for any of the feel-good era of the 1960s, Charles Manson. Stay tuned. What the Hell Were You Thinking podcast is brought to you by Spawn Movie Ranch Family Fun Tours. This summer, why not take the entire family for a Wild West adventure at Spawn Ranch, nestled in the scenic Santa Susana Pass State Historic Park. Spawn Ranch, where classic episodes of television were filmed, including The Lone Ranger and Bonanza, and movies like 1964 cinema classic The Creeping Terror. Rent one of our rustic cabins nestled in the hills overlooking the Simi Valley for hiking, biking, trail running, and nightly sing-alongs. Spawn Movie Ranch Family Fun Tours. It's fun for all kinds of families.
In a scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite, 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski. Miss Tate, who starred in Valley of the Dolls, was 8 months pregnant and was found in a bikini-type nightgown with a rope around her neck attached to the body of a man. Among the other victims were Hollywood hairstylist Jay Sebring and coffee heiress Abigail Folger. Authorities would allow no one in an unofficial capacity inside the posh $200,000 home in the hills overlooking Los Angeles. Polanski, who directed Rosemary's Baby and other films of suspense, reportedly is in Europe. One of the first officers on the scene, Police Sergeant Stanley Conrad.
Well, at the scene we had one body in a vehicle near the gate, a man and a woman in the main room, and a man and a woman on the lawn in front of the house. All deceased.
Oh, I have made some bad decisions because I was getting laid.
That doesn't sound like you at all.
Now, I'm not talking about doing stupid things hoping I would get laid, but rather the kind of things I would do because it was getting me laid. Like there was the stripper in El Paso I went with to meet her cocaine connection in Juarez, Mexico. I mean, I knew she did blow, but what I didn't know was the only reason she was fucking me in the first place was that she thought I could help her move weight back across the border because I was working for the U.S. Customs at the time.
Isn't that horribly illegal?
Oh, very much so, which is why I snuck out of the bathroom window and abandoned her at the bar. Then there was the time I went home with a chick from a karaoke bar and woke up next to her in the morning, and she was butt naked reading the Bible, explaining that we had consummated our wedding the night before in the eyes of God, so we were now man and wife. So, I crawled out our bathroom window and ran off to hide so she couldn't find me.
It seems like there's a pattern.
Well, it happened twice, but I wouldn't call it a pattern. Then there was this married woman that I was banging while her husband was deployed, whose kink was introducing her husband to the guy she was fucking when he came back, without telling the guys that she had fucked that it was their thing.
It's pronounced cuckolding.
There was the time I got dumped while I was deployed and got drunk at a Spanish bordello and bought 2 prostitutes at the same time. Nothing bad happened there. I just wanted to drop in that I'd done that. And of course, there was the dumbest possible things I could do because I was getting laid. Fall in love.
You poor fool.
Look, I cannot in good conscience recommend this because one of two things will happen. You will break up and your heart will get broken, or you will get married, start raising children together, spend a lifetime of ups and downs, good times and bad, see your children grow up and start their lives and grow old together knowing that your life was immeasurably better because you shared it with someone you loved, and then one of you fucking dies. And it is worse than getting dumped while deployed, and no number of hookers at the same time will be enough to assuage the grief of your loss. I mean, I'm just guessing about that. Maybe there is a magic hooker number that makes grief go away.
No, Dave.
But as many dumb things as I've done, I've never invited a group of drugged-up hippie murderers to live in my mansion because their creepy criminal cult leader gave me some acid and wanted to use my recording studio, which, brings me to this week's topic, the Manson family. But first...
And now, as promised, the tangent.
Damn it again. We've got so much shit to cover, I don't have a tangent, don't have time, so I've got to dive right into the material, namely one Charles Miles Maddox. Born in Cincinnati, Ohio, November 12th, 1934, Charlie, well, that wasn't his birth name. His actual birth name was No Name Maddox for a long while because his 16-year-old prostitute mother, Ada Kathleen Maddox, couldn't be bothered to come up with a name. His absentee, presumptive biological father was named Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr.
You see, my dad was a military man.
No, he was a con man, but his first name was literally Colonel. His stepfather, William Manson, married Kathleen while she was pregnant with Charlie, presumably because she had lied and said the baby was his. If you think I'm being some kind of dick to a pregnant teenage prostitute mother, hold on to your knickers while I regale you with some of the tales of Mama Maddox. Kathleen routinely just abandoned baby Charlie with whomever he could be convinced to watch him for more than 5 minutes, while she went off on drinking binges with her brother Luther. There's a story there that never got told. She was a thief and a liar, and she once tried to sell baby Charlie to a fellow bar patron for a pitcher of beer. In August of 1939, Kathleen and Luther, seriously something was going on there, were arrested for assault and robbery and sentenced to 5 to 10 years of prison, respectively. Charlie, you see, came by his criminal nature, quite honestly. Much of what we think we know about the early life of Charles Manson comes from an extremely unreliable narrator, Charles Manson. Oddly enough, the very people featured in the early years of little Charlie's life are either not alive or not willing to talk about their alleged activities, like selling young Charlie as a fuck toy, which is something Charlie claims happened and probably did. The most reliable sources for what he did as a youth, where he came from, and where he spent most of his time in jail for various crimes, ranging from petty theft to arson, comes from the criminal court proceedings. The arson resulted in Manson being consigned to the Gibault School for Boys in Terre Haute, Indiana, a school ran by Catholic priests in 1940s.
Well, that can't be good. No.
According to the weeklyview.net, quote, in 1947, 13-year-old Charles Manson was sent to a boarding school run by Roman Catholic priests, the Gibault School for Boys in Terre Haute, a strict school where punishment for even the tiniest infraction was included beating by either a wooden paddle or a leather strap. Eventually, living at Gibault got too much for Charles, and he ran away. He slept in the woods, under bridges, and wherever else he could find a place to shelter, unquote. Manson claimed the school was little more than a rape repository where the boys were routinely sodomized by the other boys and, of course, the priest. He would be in and out of reform schools throughout his youth until his graduation to adult jail in 1951 because he was caught raping a boy at knife point and did 3 years in grown-up jails where he committed numerous disciplinary offenses, including, you guessed it, more rapes. Now, if you haven't figured it out by now, Charles Manson's childhood was not idyllic. Even factoring in Manson's penchant for bullshit, he was neglected, abused sexually, physically, and psychologically, basically from birth. It was as if someone had built a Build-A-Bear workshop, but instead of making snuggly teddy bears, you created your own career criminal sex offender.
Why would anyone do that?
Because America? I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for Charles Manson, the man. Charles Manson, the boy, sure, but not the adult. You see, this nugget of information is needed to help you contextualize the rest of the Manson story because everyone in this story is both a villain and a victim, just like Charlie. There's nothing unique in any of them, and alone they probably would have been nothing more than petty criminals at worst, but together they were exponentially worse than the sum of their parts, because of their influence upon one another and, an ungodly amount of acid. Manson would be in and out of prison for the rest of his life, and honestly, prison was the best life Charlie ever led. He liked prison. Shit, he loved prison. It was like criminal college. Sex, drugs, music, murders, things Charlie had deep interest in. It wasn't all crime school. He would meet interesting people. According to Danny Trejo, he met Charlie in prison, and Manson hypnotized him. From Mediate, quote, "It was like guided meditation," Trejo wrote, adding that Manson had the group believing they were smoking marijuana and then injecting heroin, using his words alone. "By the time he described it hitting my bloodstream, I felt the warmth flowing through my body," recalled Trejo, who was a teenage heroin addict. "If that white boy wasn't a career criminal, he could have been a professional hypnotist," unquote. But more importantly, it was in prison that Manson discovered his one true love.
Maybe I want to be a pimp.
No, that was his second favorite thing. I'm talking about music. Bank robber and former member of the Ma Barker gang, Alvin Creepy Karpus, taught Charlie how to play steel guitar and kind of took the little guy under his wing. Throughout all the story, you really do need to remember how fucking tiny Charles Manson was. He was 5 feet 2 inches tall.
You're a wee little puppet, man.
Anyway, Karpus would write in his autobiography in 1980, as quoted in Oxygen.com, quote, "This kid approaches me to request music lessons. He wants to learn guitar and become a music star. Little Charlie is so lazy and shiftless, I doubt he'll put in the time required to learn," he reportedly wrote. The youngster has been in institutions all of his life, first orphanages and then reformatories and finally federal prison. His mother, a prostitute, was never around to look after him, and I decide it's time someone did something for him, and to my surprise, he learns quickly. He has a pleasant voice and a pleasing personality, though he's unusually meek and mild for a convict. He never has a harsh word to say and is never involved in even an argument, unquote. Well, it's time to talk about it. And what can I say about Charlie's music? Well, here's a small sample.
Pretty girl, pretty girl. Cease to exist. Just come and say you love me.
Well, it's not great. It's not even particularly good. It's marginally better than what I could produce, but that isn't a compliment because I can't write or play music worth a damn. Yet somehow, Manson wormed his way into the counterculture music scene in the late 1960s and persisted in having a disproportionate influence on the music in general over the late part of the 20th century. How he got into the scene isn't particularly hard to explain.
Drug, pussy, street games.
That actual musicians continue to find merit in his music is somewhat more confusing. From theoutline.com, quote, "Cumulatively, all of this kept Manson as a presence in rock and roll, albeit an elusive one. He was unavoidable, but you had to be tuned into the frequency to discern his location. In the 90s, Manson references finally became too on the nose. Marilyn Manson adopted his surname for his shock rock. Guns N' Roses cut Charlie's Look at Your Game Girl for their 1994 covers album. The Spaghetti Incident. Trent Reznor decided to rent 1050 Cielo Drive so he could record The Downward Spiral there. Paying respects to Manson was now enshrined as a way of establishing your edge, an idea that certainly inspired that brief and horrible moment when the paintings of serial killers were considered as outsider art, unquote. And it was his music that motivated Manson and created his delusion that his musical genius wasn't recognized and he was being intentionally kept from his rightful status as a rock star. A delusion which fueled, again along with astronomical amounts of LSD, the horrible things which Charles Manson is rightfully remembered. So, guess we got to get to that part of the story now, don't we? In March of 1967, Manson was finishing up a stint in federal prison for forging a signature on a treasury check he'd stolen from a mailbox. As his parole was processed, Manson actually asked to stay in prison, telling officials, again from Oxygen, no, man, I can't go back outside there. I knew I couldn't adjust to that world, not after my life had been locked up. Well, that's when my mind was free, unquote. Nevertheless, he was paroled from Terminal Island Prison in San Francisco, where he walked out the prison gates and directly into the Summer of Love. As we discussed in episode 523...
That's a plug.
San Francisco was bulging at the seams with hippies, grifters, runaways, and junkies all looking to cash in on the river of acid and sex that was Haight Ashbury. And here came Charlie, who had missed everything that led up to this bizarre moment in American history. He did not know, nor would he care, about the civil rights movement, women's liberation, the Vietnam War, or any of that shit. What he did care about were drugs and girls. Now, Manson was actually very intelligent, tiny, but smart, and he possessed an innate understanding of how to manipulate others, having spent his entire life learning to manipulate others to keep them from either killing him outright or turn him into the permanent fuck receptacle for an entire wing of a prison. As Charlie watched these young, horny rubes swirl around him, he quickly understood that he could use this, that he could spin a mix of pop psychology from well-intentioned prison shrinks, some old-time religion, a healthy dose of Scientology, which, yes, he got into Scientology while he was in prison, his music, and his easy access to mind-altering substance, and set himself up as a pimp guru god for the lost children of the Haight.
Kids are going to love me.
It began with a 23-year-old woman named Mary Brunner. She had graduated college in Wisconsin and headed west to find the new life in California and was working as a library assistant at UC Berkeley. That's where she met a tiny panhandler on the streets of Berkeley, and being a kind-hearted girl, she offered him a place to stay. Within weeks, Charlie had worked his charisma on her, and she and Charlie were in a relationship. Well, she was in a relationship. Charlie was fucking her, along with any other woman he could scam into fucking him, which was a lot, because Charles had learned the ancient ways of the pimp. Pod friends, I cannot teach you the ways of the pimp because I have a soul. I can, however, offer these maxims, which are actual chapter titles from a book called Pimpology, the 48 Laws of the Game, written by Pimp Kin in 2007. Maxims such as Law number 4, keep a hoe in arrears. Law number 5, prey on the weak. Law 12, ain't no love in this shit. Law 17, get you a bottom bitch. Law 22, keep hoes on they toes. Law 37, let a hoe know. Law 47, pimping is what you do, not who you are. Charlie was obsessed with the idea of being a pimp and learned these ancient laws from actual old school pimps in prison. The kind of pimps that cut a hoe if she didn't act right. But Charlie wasn't looking to keep a stable of earners. The women Charlie collected were for Charlie, and they were recipients of his love, though he had zero problems renting one of them out for money, drugs, or favors. And it did not take long for Mary Brunner to come on board with Charlie's pimpin' ways. Within months, there were as many as 18 other women sharing Mary Brunner's apartment and Charlie, and this was despite her being pregnant, or maybe because she was pregnant with Charlie's baby. Charlie and Mary would take their burgeoning family,
that's called foreshadowing,
on the road in a battered school bus, eventually squatting in an empty house in Topanga Canyon neighborhood of Los Angeles. Mary would go on to be the first to be granted one of Charlie's nom de famille, being called Marioche Ock, Mother Mary, Mary Manson, Linda D. Manson, and of course, Christine Marie Ukes. And it was in Los Angeles that shit began getting very strange, because Tiny Charlie and his band of followers interacted with an astonishing number of Hollywood types in music, television, and film. Now, I hear you asking.
No, you didn't.
Hollywood in the late 60s. That was pretty fucking strange. So, it would have to be really strange for you to mention it in this context. Well, it began with Charlie's gig as a babysitter.
That's a really bad idea.
But it wasn't him being a babysitter, however a bad idea that was. It's the strange thing. It's who Charles Manson babysat for.
My boy, I want you to be a witness to my degradation.
Veteran actor Al Lewis, who was best known to later generations as the vampire grandpa on the Munsters television show. For reasons never adequately explained, he hired Charles fucking Manson to babysit his children. When asked about it after what happened, he simply said, well, he was a nice guy when I knew him. Producer Phil Kaufman, who worked for luminaries such as Graham Parsons, the Rolling Stones, Emmylou Harris, Joe Cocker, Frank Zappa, Hank Williams III, and Etta James, introduced Charlie to film producer Gary Stromberg, who would go on later to make 70s classic movies like Car Wash, who according to Wikipedia was, quote, working on a film adaptation of the life of Jesus set in modern America, featuring a black Jesus and southern redneck Romans. Stromberg thought that Manson made interesting suggestions about what Jesus might do in a situation and seemed to be attuned to the role. He had one of his women kiss his feet and then kissed hers in return to demonstrate the place of women. Oh, those dirty hippie feet. Oh. At the beach one day, Stromberg watched while Manson preached against the materialistic outlook, and one of his followers questioned him about his well-furnished bus. Manson tossed the keys to the bus to the doubter, who promptly drove the bus away while Manson watched, apparently unconcerned, unquote. Let's take a second now to talk about the family. What Charlie's group of groupies were now calling themselves. Over the years in Los Angeles, the group had grown and contracted, reaching as high as over 100 and as low as about a dozen. But the core of the family was Charles Manson, Charles Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, Linda Kasabian, Mary Brunner, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, Bobby Beausoleil, Steve Clem Grogan, and Bruce Davis. Outside of this constant core, a fluid group of mostly young women came and went, largely in pursuit of drugs or sex. You will note that Charlie had several men in the family. Charlie wanted and needed dudes around for protection, and to keep the women of the group he wasn't currently fucking content until Charlie got around to blessing them with his present. The dudes were muscle, because Charlie did not have any. Now back to the Hollywood story. But by far, Charlie's biggest get was Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. Wilson picked up two hippie chicks who were very high and very drunk, and the ladies told Dennis they wanted to keep the party going, and naturally Dennis did what any gentleman would do and invited them back to his home, where they did drugs and fucked.
Naturally.
The two women were, of course, Patricia, also known as Big Patty, Yellow Marnie, Reeves, Mary Ann Scott, Katie Krenwinkel, and Ella Jo Cinderella Bailey of the Manson family. And when Dennis left the women to go do music things, he came back later that day to find Charles Manson standing in his driveway looking very Charles Manson. Dennis asked Charlie if he was going to hurt him. Come on, he's fucking 5'2". And Charles replied, no, and responded by kissing Dennis Wilson's feet. Y'all, I like feet. I'm not a freak about it or anything, but I like feet. I find them attractive. But Charlie's foot thing is just fucking weird. Now, this was enough for Dennis, who went back inside the mansion and found a dozen strangers, most of them women, and Dennis looked at Charlie and said,
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
More from Wikipedia, quote, over the next few months, the number of women doubled in Wilson's house. He covered their costs, which amounted to approximately $100,000. The total included a large medical bill for treatment of their gonorrhea and $21,000 for the destruction of his uninsured car, which they had borrowed. Wilson would sing and talk with Manson, and both men treated the women like servants, unquote. You know, servants. They cook for them, they clean for them, and then they fuck them, because that is the true summer of love. The Manson family lived with Dennis Wilson for about 6 acid and sex-fueled months. It was while tripping balls that Dennis decided he was going to help Charlie's music career and brought him to his music producer, Terry Melcher. Melcher, the child of actress Doris Day, was the producer of many bands in the mid-1960s, most notably the Byrds and later the Beach Boys. Fun fact, Melcher had produced the fetid dog turd of the song Kokomo in the 1980s, that was on the soundtrack of the movie Cocktail, which we discussed with loathing and vitriol in episode number 365.
Stupid logs.
Wilson and Melcher got Charlie and the gang in the studio and recorded several songs, one of which was eventually retitled and covered by the Beach Boys called Never Learn Not to Love. It was the song that you heard earlier that was called by Charlie Cease to Exist. Never Learn Not to Love went nowhere and is only remembered because it was Manson's work. Not that you would know that, because even before the bad stuff happened, Wilson cut Charlie out of any credit for the song. Dennis said as Charlie gave him the song as compensation for the many thousands of dollars of damage the family did to his property, and Charlie said Dennis stole it. To say that Melcher was unimpressed with Charlie would be an understatement. All the drugs and pussy in the world couldn't compensate for the truth about Manson's music, and that was in the most charitable light. He was a middling talent amateur, and so arrogant that he couldn't accept any kind of direction that might make him a better musician. Manson insisted on using the girls from the family as backing vocals, girls who could not sing and mostly just stood around and mooned over Charlie. Nor did Manson understand the concept of laying down multiple tracks for the same section of the song to weave them together in the best possible version of the song. Charlie wanted to do one take, get high, and fuck. And Melcher quickly realized that Manson was never going to be a musician, much less a star. From FoxNews.com, quote, after the murders, Terry told the LAPD that he referred to a possible music talent. But he said once that he got to Manson's place, he just wanted to get the hell out of there. It was filthy and very obvious there was no talent. He described hearing Manson's girls singing while he played the guitar, and he felt he had to get out. So he tried to make a graceful exit, unquote. But you know, it's not exactly how that worked, because he was in the studio with Charlie, and also, unfortunately for everyone involved, he did not make his decision that Charlie could not be redeemed until after he had had the whole Manson family to his home for a party at 1050 Cielo Drive. Dennis Wilson was heartily tired of the Manson family, also very frightened of them. So rather than kick Manson out of his mansion, Dennis left them there and moved somewhere where Charlie couldn't find him. The family was booted out of the mansion because the lease was expiring. So naturally, they stole everything they could get their hands on that wasn't nailed down and even pried some of the nails out of the walls before they left Dennis Wilson's mansion. Charlie was very upset by all of this. He had been telling the family for months now he was about to be famous. They would have a bunch of mansions for themselves and they would all be rich. But there was no record, there was no money, there was no mansions, and no fame. And some of the outer circle began to drift off, and Charlie got very worried that he was going to lose the core group of the family, so he decided to take the faithful out to the desert and move them all to a former movie ranch in the desert hills outside of Los Angeles called Spawn Ranch. On the ranch, where they lived for rent-free because Squeaky Fromm was fucking the octogenarian owner of the ranch, Charlie began to scheme up new ways to keep the family together, largely involving selling drugs and making go-karts.
They have go-karts and ski ball.
Also, there were caves in the desert, race wars, and, murder. That is where we will pick up in 2 weeks with the family's descent into bloodshed. So, y'all come back now, you hear?
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
That is it for the show this week. Here we are talking about the Manson family. Y'all, I have left out a lot, because to put all the details in would take a whole series of shows just to cover the weird shit in Hollywood alone. And also, someone did it much better than I ever could. You must remember this podcast devoted a 12-episode season to Manson's Hollywood in 2015, and it is as close to definitive as you can get. There's a link to it in the show notes. Speaking of podcasts better than this one, rate and review us so other folks can find this podcast, take a listen, and then wonder why you didn't suggest a better podcast. Kick us $1 at patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast. We use that money to pay for go-kart rentals. Do all the things Jeremy tells you to do in the closing credits. Otherwise, we're going to lose our spot in the network's post-apocalypse cave system. And so, for me, Dave, we are family. Bledsoe, producer.
I have no siblings.
Gavin, and all the fictional Manson family members on this show, we want to say, if you see hippie girls on the highway hitchhiking, just keep driving, brother. Just keep driving. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
I won't tell no lie. All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just a BC for the record. We're giving love in a
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
Helter Skelter, here we come.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.